Recotopia, episode 74. I am Jeremy Scott.
And I'm Aaron Dicer.
And today's big recommend is the Coen brothers, Inside Llewyn Davis. Let's give a shout out to the live chat viewers, and a quick caveat that my internet is supposed to go in and out all day long as Comcast does work locally. And so far, it has been on all day and working fine. But prepare for the worst. Hopefully this will go well. Aaron, do you have any small recommends this week?
Oh, for sure I do. Let's start with the biggie. No, not that one. Easy mistake. Not Mission Impossible Fallout. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Oh, man.
Yes. Finally got to see the new Mission Impossible. And by finally, I mean even before it came out, because I went to a press screening.
Nice.
It is so very good. I think the thing that I will focus on, because I don't want to give it away any spoilers or anything like that I think McQuarrie and Cruise have done here so well is they've embraced the action as part of the storytelling and not just a way to like impress the audience. Now, does it impress the audience? Sure. There's a lot of very impressive things here. But the action set pieces in this movie, to me, are these beautiful miniature puzzle pieces like that have like sections to them and mini goals and mini stories, and there's all of the human experience in these action set pieces. There's levity, there's anger, there's joy, there's it's this really interesting way to keep you invested and comprehending what's going on. And there are at least three major set pieces in this movie, and all of them are just magic. They're just magic to watch. And it all serves the story. It all serves what's going on and what our, protagonists' goals are. So the other part I wanted to mention is, you will notice this is a part 1. They have said so from the very beginning that this is a part 1 of 2. And yet it feels more like a complete movie than many of the other part 1s we've seen this year. And I think a lot of that has to do with the movie itself has a very clear beginning, middle, and end purpose that is being sought after, that has a resolution. Are there hanging threads? Yeah, there's some hanging threads, but there's not a cliffhanger. Somebody online was saying, yeah, but it still has a cliffhanger. I do not believe it does. I think our definition of the word cliffhanger may be a little bit different if you think this has any kind of cliffhanger.
Two humans have a different understanding of what a word means? That's unheard of.
Just because there are unresolved hanging threads does not necessarily mean the movie ends on a cliffhanger. And I think this movie resolves really, really well, especially for a part 1. So I loved this movie. It's a big, small recommend.
I'm going to do that cliche thing and ask you to compare it to Fallout.
Mission Impossible Fallout?
Yes, indeed.
I think you are going to have a similar experience, but I think this movie is better.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
I did read today that McQuarrie was quoted as saying, every time we finish one of these movies, Tom immediately says to me, we can do better. Like, listen, I think you have to be a very specific type of person to work with Tom Cruise, because I think he is, and I don't see McQuarrie as an intense personality at all. He actually seems quite soft-spoken to me, but and I think that's probably why they mesh fairly well. But from a aspiration standpoint, when you set out to make a film, don't forget McQuarrie also wrote and produced Top Gun Maverick. So they're 3 for 3. It sounds like 4 for 4. Sounds like now, because it sucks that like Rogue Nation came out and like ruled all, and now it's like third or fourth down the list because they just keep topping themselves.
Yeah, I just think they have such an innate understanding of how to do an action movie. And look, I understand why people love the John Wick movies. I understand why there's this idea of like, well, even Extraction 2 came out recently, and there's this idea of action as this series of athletic movements, and I get it. That's interesting to watch, and it certainly has a form of entertainment to it. But I am so much more predisposed to this type of action film where the action is serving something greater, and it doesn't feel like it's its own showcase. It feels like it's part of an actual authentic movie experience. It's very Spielbergian in that way.
I was just about to bring up Last Crusade.
Yeah.
I was just about to bring up Last Crusade.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Jurassic Park, Last Crusade have a lot of these same kind of action sequences that feel this way. So yeah,
Awesome.
definitely.
All right. Well, it's on my list for sure. I will be watching that. I'm going to go with a movie for my first small recommend, but those of you who enjoy my non-movie recommends, you hang on. But I recently got to rewatch The Birdcage with Nathan Lane and Robin Williams just about 3 or 4 days ago. And I just, every time I see this movie, it's probably my 8th or 9th time watching it. It makes me laugh out loud and cry laughing at times. It's just everyone gets a chance to show off how good an actor they are. Like Gene Hackman, especially in the end when he's in full drag and makeup. Nathan Lane obviously steals the show. Robin Williams is somehow understated a little bit in this movie. And I can't speak to how well this plays in terms of like gay clubs and whatnot and gay relationships. I'm not trying to do that. If this movie is out of touch and offensive, then I certainly apologize. I did watch it with that kind of eye this time through, and I feel like everybody is pretty uncomfortable with the idea that they're asking Nathan Lane to be less gay. I feel like everyone is uncomfortable with that, as they should be. Anyway, yeah, it is a remake of a French film, La Cage aux Folles, which is just as good, if not in its own way better. But The Birdcage is it's just delightful. It's just a breeze. I just have fun and I leave smiling every single time. So there you go. The Birdcage.
A really fun Hank Azaria performance, as all Hank Azaria performances are.
It's maybe my favorite Hank Azaria performance because he's so it's not like anybody I've ever seen him play. And how do you almost steal a movie from Nathan Lane and Robin Williams? How do you do that?
You're Hank Azaria, I guess.
Yeah, he's very, very funny. All right, do you have a second small recommend this week, Mr. Dice?
I do. From the world of television, the After Party Season 2 will have dropped the first couple episodes by the time you hear this, unless you're watching live, in which case it's tomorrow. But I wanted to small recommend the After Party Season 1 in preparation for Season 2. This, to me, fell under the radar for far too many people. It is an Apple TV Plus show. It is a murder mystery where every single episode is from the perspective of a different character and is produced in a completely different genre. So the genre kind of matches the character's personality. So one of them is a musical. One of them is I'm going to say a medical drama. Like it's just like a different style. So like one of them is an animated half hour. So like it's a really interesting way to get you the information you need from each character as you're trying to solve this murder mystery up until the end. And I think it works as both an entertaining episode by episode project. In the murder mystery works as well. I think it's a really smart murder mystery. So I'm really excited for season 2. I cannot recommend the After Party enough. I do not think enough people have watched this. It's kind of like that Apple TV Plus environment has these shows that break through and then just some that nobody watches. And this feels like it's more the second than the first.
Isn't Ted Lasso the only one that really broke through? Like, I mean, other than you watch a lot of content, but I don't know anyone who's seen that Harrison Ford, Jason Segel show. Yeah. I have seen, reporters write about it, but I don't know anyone that's watched it. Same with the morning show. I don't know anybody that's watched that show.
Yeah, Silo's kind of breaking through a little bit, and I haven't watched that one. But no, you're absolutely right.
This show sounds awesome, and it's got a lot of people I love in it, but it's pissing me off because I didn't realize that's what it was. And that's an idea. I had an idea for years to do a TV show set in a movie theater, like a clerk style environment where it's the focus is on the employees, because I have a lot of experience there. And then every episode would have been in a different film genre. But now somebody's already beat me to it. Like all ideas, you got to do it, or someone's going to do it.
Yeah, it happens. Somebody mentions Severance breaking through. Yeah, I think Severance did break through. I can't decide if For All Mankind broke through or not. I've really enjoyed For All Mankind, but do you know For All Mankind?
Never even heard of it.
For All Mankind. Oh my goodness. For All Mankind is a show that posits what if Russia got to the moon first, and how would that have impacted the space race, and then it just, it's kind of a branching history kind of from there, and it's really fascinating. It gets really good after season 2. It's fine in season 1 and season 2, and then it just gets really good.
One of my favorite graphic novels is Superman. What if Superman had landed in Russia instead of the United States?
Sure.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
All right, my second small recommend is bursting out of the realm of film and television and back to a world I'm very comfortable in, carbonated beverages. And this week, I would like to tell you, if you see a cherry or tropical mix Sprite in your gas station or local supermarket, I can tell you they are both really, really good. The tropical one is my favorite. It kind of surprised me how tropically it tastes. And because here's the deal, I'm doing this new thing where I've raved on this show about some zero sugar sodas that taste like the real deal. Like I'm famously said Coke and Sprite have gotten pretty much there. But then all this stuff came out about not aspartame, but the other one, sucralose, and how they did this study where it like basically can create cancer. I mean, I'm simplifying, but it basically creates chemicals in your body that attack your body, or can.
Recotopia is not a medical show. Everything is for entertainment purposes only.
Yes, exactly. And I'm not telling anyone to live my life the way or live your life the way I live mine, but I have now ditched the zero sugar sodas of all kinds. Half of them are like aspartame and half of them are sucralose. And I've gone back to sugared soda, but I just do it in super moderation. I don't drink soda every day anymore. And I have actually lost weight. So there you go. Boom, in your face. The remix Sprite on the screen is not the one I'm talking about, but actually maybe it is. Tropical Aruba Jam. I don't know what that is, but they have a tropical mix Sprite and a cherry Sprite. And I hope you can find it near you. It's very tasty.
Yeah, when I was looking up like for the pictures and stuff, there were so many different Sprite remixes that they're
hard
doing.
to know.
And so I put 3 of them on screen, hoping that one of them might be the right one. So one of them's the tropical one. So I thought,
they've changed their packaging. I'm talking about the 20-ounce bottles now. It's like if it's regular Sprite, it's all green with white letters. If it's this cherry one, it's going to be a red, like Coke red, but it'll have white Sprite letters. And then the tropical mix has an orange label and it has white Sprite across it. So there you go. I've already spent entirely too much time giving Sprite free advertising. All right. It is time for this week's big recommend. The Coen brothers, Inside Llewyn Davis. And this was my first time ever watching this movie. And yes, I did message Aaron in the middle of watching it to make threats about what would happen if the cat did not survive. Aaron, this was your choice. Why don't you kick us off?
Inside Llewyn Davis is one of my favorite Coen brothers movies. It was one of those movies where I'm going to say about half hour in, and I wasn't sure if I was enjoying myself, what was going on. Like, I was like, this doesn't feel very Coen-y to me. Like, I was having trouble placing it in their repertoire, those kind of things. And then it just grabbed hold of me. And it's that kind of happens with tone poem movies sometimes. And I believe this is a little bit of a tone poem where you kind of go along for the ride. But by the end, and what it chooses to do towards the end, took me to another level with this movie. And I was like, oh, is this kind of what they're saying, what they're getting at? And so I thought about this movie for days after watching it. Oscar Isaac plays Llewyn Davis. We start in 1961 at the Gaslight Cafe. This is very much a movie about folk singing. The Coens have called it a sister movie to O Brother, Where Art Thou? In that there is, kind of a similar feel to the old style folk music in O Brother and the more 60s style folk music here, as well as the fact that there's Iliad and Odyssey references throughout this one, as well as there are in O Brother, Where Art Thou. We start with Oscar Isaac singing a beautiful song at the Gaslight Cafe. By the way, Oscar Isaac can sing. Hello. Really, really good stuff here from him and everybody else who is in here. And then we follow this character through their life. The Coens have famously said this movie does not have a plot. And I think that's fairly true. We're kind of seeing just different vignettes from what this folk singer is going through, whether it's how he couch surfs from family to family, whether it be his relationship with another folk singing duo where he may or may not have gotten the female member of that duo pregnant and is trying to pay for her abortion, and finds out later that another woman he got pregnant that he paid for an abortion didn't have her abortion and kept the child, and finds out he may be a dad of a 2-year-old. So like he's going through all this stuff. He ends up deciding to record on a song as a player and give up royalties. And of course, the song becomes a big hit that could have made him lots and lots of money. It's one of my favorite scenes, the recording of that song. The stuff that Adam Driver is doing in that song is so good and so true. It's so authentic to some of the stuff that was going on in like quirky folk music in the 60s. So it's a lot of fun. There's a whole John Goodman section where he's traveling with them. And some of the most interesting dialogue comes from John Goodman in this movie. Some really hilarious stuff there. And we just kind of follow Llewyn Davis through his life. A constant thread is the cat that Jeremy has mentioned. And, you know, the very first day the cat escapes, he catches it but can't get back in, so he has to keep it at his place. Then it escapes from his place. He thinks he finds it. He thinks he returns it to them. It turns out it's not even the same gender, the same biological sex.
Where's his testicles?
Where's his scrotum? Where's his scrotum, Llewyn? Where's his scrotum? So that's not the cat, but he does find out later that the cat has returned and is named Ulysses. And that is probably means something, I would imagine. But as we finish the movie with the same scene we started with. And it is either a revelation that we were in a very tricky in medias res, where we started at the end and didn't know it, and then went back in time, or is the movie saying that it's all one big loop, it's all one big circle?
Well, it's definitely saying that, right?
Yeah. Yes. Like, I think so. Yes.
Okay.
I have thoughts on what this movie means. I have thoughts, which again is why I love it so much, because there is so much to chew on as far as like, what are they trying to say with this? What does this mean? What is it about? And yet beyond that, it's also just a really engaging watch. Like you're just interested in the vignettes of his life. So, Jeremy, what did you think of Inside Llewyn Davis?
I loved watching it. I think it's great. I'm not sure my opinions about what this movie is saying and means are going to be the same as you. This guy's an asshole.
Yes.
This guy is straight up a bitch, and it says a lot about the Coens and his acting ability that I ever pull for him in even the slightest bit. But he is so high on his artistic self.
Yep.
He gives that self-righteous speech to his sister, I think, about how you chose the safe path and I'm out there living. And at the end of the movie, no, you're not, dude. You are just stuck in the same endless loop until you die like the rest of us.
Yes.
And I think this movie does not like this guy. And I think it's based loosely on a real folk singer who had an album called Inside His Name, whatever it was. And his people and friends have been like adamant, from what I can read, like he wasn't really like this. He was a really super nice guy and everybody loved him. So I think this is I think the movie is asking, do any of us actually live any kind of a special, unique, extraordinary life, or do we all just end up caught in our own loop of our own making over and over again. So yeah, I think I have a very bleak view on what this movie's conclusions are, but I really enjoyed watching it. I think the opening song's one of the most compelling openings to a movie I've seen, even though that song is depressing as hell. I love all the characters we meet along the way. I love, the Gomer Pyle guy, who's a really good singer, who's in the military, who's just seems like the straightest arrow you'll ever meet. I love the fight between Carey Mulligan and him, where she just refuses to show any positive emotions to him. She's like, you're shit. Everything you do turns to shit. And he's trying to say, it takes two to tango. You couldn't make a baby without two of us. And she's not even hearing that. She's just like, you're shit. You're going to fix this. So yeah, let's see some other notes I wrote. The cat thing stressed me out a little bit, only because I did have a cat get away for 3 days when I was young, little boy, and I have learned in therapy that was a traumatic event for me. But I have processed it well enough that I also knew, I instinctively knew, this is not the kind of movie that's going to kill the cat. Although it does have a car hit a cat and the cat limp off the side of the road, which Aaron may believe is a dream.
I have come to believe that it is possible. Let's just go ahead and talk about this here. I think the cat is the protagonist of the movie.
Which cat?
The main cat.
There are three cats.
The cat that gets out. Well, we don't know for sure that the one on the road isn't the main cat, right?
I do.
You do? How do you?
How the fuck would that cat get from New York City out to halfway between New York and Chicago?
That is the question, right? I'm wondering, because he stops and stares at that incredible Journey poster for so long that I'm wondering if, like, he's realizing he is a secondary character in this cat's story.
That is a very interesting take. And there's clearly, they wouldn't even show us that poster if that wasn't supposed to be important.
Right.
But no, my view is that it's three different cats. He may very well see it as the same cat. And I think that's very interesting.
Yeah.
But I think it was three different cats.
That seems a safe bet.
I did like when John Goodman's character starts trashing on a city called Murfreesboro, and I really hope he's talking about the one in Tennessee, because he's absolutely correct. That is not a good town, in my opinion. This movie really wants me to feel cold. I underlined that in my notes. It's very palpable how cold it is, wintry, and I think that's also another subtext. I wanted to talk about a few of the IMDb trivia notes.
Go for it. Yeah,
I don't know if you looked at any of these.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that they said they were open about how the movie has no plot. And the quote I read is that he says, that's why we threw the cat in there.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And then
the cat becomes the structure.
Ethan Cohen says, the cat was a nightmare. The trainer warned us, and she was right. She said, dogs like to please you. The cat only likes to please itself. A cat basically is impossible to train. We have a lot of footage of cats doing things we don't want them to do, if anyone's interested. I don't know if there's a market for that. Hell yes, there is. I want to see an entire movie's length of the cat not doing
just
what
like
you
12
wanted.
Hours straight of the cat from Inside Llewyn Davis just messing around.
When I read that quote, I was like, well, yeah, like it takes a person who's not a cat person to think you can train a cat to do. Every time you see a cat in a movie, it's this. They've got lots of footage of the cat not doing what they want it to. And he even says we ended up using a bunch of different cats, and we would just meet the cat and see what it liked to do. And then we would film that scene with that cat. And then the cat that likes to sit still, we would film another scene with that cat. The cat that likes the subway, we'd film another scene with that cat. Another thing I wrote was that Oscar Isaac had a meeting with T-Bone Burnett, who's the music supervisor. T-Bone Burnett put on a Tom Waits record and left the room for an hour. Oscar Isaac says that was a Mr. Miyagi moment. That was the first lesson. Yeah, I just think it's a fascinating movie. A lot of big names auditioned to play Llewyn Davis, and it was Oscar Isaac that ended up landing the gig, and I think that was probably perfect. That was probably fortune. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. there are likable characters in this, but they're all around the periphery. And this guy is just a jerk.
Who's likable? I was thinking about this. Like, who would you say is a likable character in this movie?
The soldier who can sing, who slurps his milk, and when he's done with his milk, he goes, "Well, that was very good." I think you could argue that Timberlake's character is likable, or at least that he's not unlikable,
right?
And yeah, same with Adam Driver. He seems pretty affable. He just willingly lets the guy come crash at his place for a couple of days. But outside of that, like, I don't think Carey Mulligan's very likable in this movie.
No, I think she's the yin to his yang. Like, I think they're both in a very similar position where the movie asks us to have, somehow creates empathy for them while saying these are terrible people. Like they're both kind of in that boat.
It felt like a very real, historied, toxic relationship between the two of them. Like they have history there, and it's not any of it good at all. Yeah, I was crushed by two moments when he takes the cash payout and says no to the royalties. Just because of that's how desperate he is for that cash. Like, I've been there. When I first moved to Nashville, I would pawn my guitar and my amp just to get through rent and cable, and I'd get my paycheck and I would get that stuff out of pawn, and then a few weeks later I'd have to go pawn it again. And that's a never-ending drainage cycle right there. And I just felt so bad. And then when he's driving back to New York and he sees the exit for Akron, and this is where he knows the previous woman who did not get the abortion. And I don't think there's any question he has a child.
Right.
And the fucking movie makes you think he's going to turn. And he not only doesn't turn, he really doesn't show any emotion at all as he just keeps driving. And that was so frustrating. But I think that is maybe the heart of this character. That is who he is. He is, no matter what he's spouting, no matter what he's singing, he's about himself. He's one of the more selfish characters I've ever seen. I think that's probably brought on by trauma, because we get hints. I mean, we don't get hints. He literally says his former partner jumped off the George Washington Bridge. So his former singing partner has
Who jumps off the
suicide.
George Washington Bridge?
Yeah.
The Brooklyn Bridge is the
Brooklyn Bridge. And so, maybe there's a reason that he's become this person, but I don't like him. I don't like him one bit. I liked the movie a lot, though.
It's interesting. I'm going to go into a little bit of a theory here, and then maybe talk about some specific moments. But I remember when it ended with the first scene. The first part of that I found interesting was the movie does an interesting thing where, because it starts with him getting beat up in an alley for something you don't know about, you don't know why, like what he said. You can make interpretations that this person is in the wrong for beating him up, that he was just, maybe he said something political from the stage that this person disagreed with. Like, you don't have any context. And so the movie allows you to paint kind of your own ideas over, is this person a sad sack? Is this person deserve this? Do they not deserve this? And I think that's really smart, because it allows you to have empathy for this character as you continue to go through, and you start to learn that he's a product of his own bad decisions. He's, yes, he's a bit of a sad sack. He is the guy who, the same day he pays his dues so he can go back into the Merchant Marines, finds out that there was this other thing he lost and can't get his payment back for paying his due. Like, that stuff happens to him, and we all can feel, we've all had those moments in life where it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I just did this thing. So like, it allows him to kind of go through those waves with us of empathy and just, you deserve this and you are, a horrible person. The other thing that it does by ending where it begins is to me, immediately, my first thought was, oh, this is a cycle. This is like a record. This is, the same way that folk music is both beautiful and harmonic. It is also melancholy and dark, and like so many folk songs sound beautiful, but are talking about like really dark things. And you mentioned it specifically, the first song we hear is very much like that. It's this beautiful melody, beautifully sung. And it's about let me die, you know, hang me on a rope, like, you know, put me out of my misery kind of thing. And the movie is kind of, in its own way, being a folk song, right? Or a folk record even. You could even see the vignettes as the different songs on the record. And then when it gets to the end, you know, you can play it all over again and start it over again because it just goes in circles, right? The grooves or the circles. In fact, the movie makes great pains a couple times to silence out everything but the rhythm of the road. And it kind of sounds like that thing a record player does when it gets to the end and it kind of skips on the end of the track. And it's like, I really think they're making a point about this movie is a recording of sorts of, you know, this person. And so this is like a folk record as a movie. In some ways is kind of where my brain went. I don't know if that was intentional. I just know that's where my brain went with the circularity of it and those kind of things. So,
I mean, I wouldn't put it past the Coen brothers to think on that kind of a level because they clearly are quite intentional about the way they go about making a film and what the symbolism is. I like that. I like that a lot. I like a lot of your theories, so maybe I'm just biased. But no, I like that. Yeah.
The way the movie introduces us to the information regarding his partner and his partner's suicide, I think is really interesting and very well done because you just start to pick up bits and pieces. I think the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time I remember thinking, oh, here's what probably happened was when he gets in the argument about don't sing his part. That was the first time where like he's lamenting and looking at these albums and you know he had a partner, but you're not, and maybe I'm forgetting something, but I don't think you're certain what happened. And then he gets really upset when she starts singing Mike's part, which by the way, in the recording was actually, I think I read in the trivia, the Mumford & Sons singer actually did that. And so I think the way the movie kind of brings you into that, again, allows you to ride the waves of empathy, and then he'll just do something that's, you know, completely mean and ill-spirited, and you're just like on that, you know, back and forth train with this guy. I just find it a captivating experience. I watched it again for this show and just was locked in.
Yeah, it's pretty riveting, and it doesn't work if you don't have that performance from Oscar Isaac. But yeah, he's like, he doesn't even want to play that. He doesn't even want to play. He's like, you know, I'm not a trained pony, and they literally bring a guitar and put it in his lap, and they're trying to recreate some experience they've had at a previous dinner party. Yeah, but his partner was there, and now that he's not, the woman decides to try and jump in and. Yeah, I think that just set him over the edge.
And he's like, this is my job. I don't ask you at a dinner party to give a speech on the Mesopotamia or whatever.
Oh, man.
Which there's some truth there. That's the other thing. He's not necessarily speaking lies. Like, there is some truth there with art where it's like when you're a comedian and people are like, oh, be funny, you know? And it's like, no, it's my job. It's what, like, people actually pay to come see me do this.
Oh, yeah.
You know, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So, yeah.
Be funny.
Right?
Hey, say something funny. There's nothing more pressure to hear than that. Well, actually, they probably are. Like, I just threw a grenade at you. It's probably more pressure filled. All right. Are we ready for the super secret double feature?
I have plenty more to say, but a lot of it is just kind of those little moments that I just wanted to bring out that I really appreciated.
Someone's at the front door.
Someone's at our front door. Those moments that I really appreciated. I love the way John Goodman does the G, G, C, D, G. He's making fun of folk music.
That character I hated, though. I mean,
yeah, of course, he's terrible. He's terrible. When he gets to that person and he's like, you know, playing for them and it's really great or whatever, the guy just looks at him and just goes, I don't see a lot of money here. So painful. Oh, it hurts so bad.
Yeah, because he played a great song. You think like another movie would, you know, a Hollywood ending would be that guy would be the guy that gets his ticket. Yeah.
Yeah. The
Sad.
way that Oscar Isaac, after he asks Adam Driver if he has an apartment, and Adam Driver says, yeah, it's a dump. And the way Oscar Isaac just goes, got a couch?
Yeah. He's had these conversations so many times. He's just trying to get to the part that matters. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I have never couch surfed. I've certainly slept on a couch at a friend's house after a party or something, but I imagine that would be an incredibly stressful way to live, and certainly, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not an easy lifestyle.
And then I'll just mention this this last the scene where he sings this beautiful song to his father and then realizes his father has defecated all over himself by the end is, I think, the biggest example of what this movie is trying to do with that combination of the beautiful and the melancholy. Like, it is the absolute highs of musical beauty and then the lows of human aging, and it's like he even talks about it a couple times after that, and I just think it's I think there's an essence there of what the movie is really trying to do, and so I did want to mention that as well. So just a lot of great stuff.
I mean, a lot of our interpretation of films often comes from our own situations, right?
Sure.
But I certainly feel like the movie's saying we're all going to end up here, no matter what art you create right now. This is where the loop ends for all of us. So yeah, I think the movie is very bleak, but beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So the super secret double feature.
Yeah.
Boy, I had thoughts. I felt like there were about 4 or 5 different ways I could go here. Like the asshole protagonist who, undoes themselves. I saw somebody in the chat suggest Wolf of Wall Street. I genuinely considered that for a brief period. I thought a lot. I was on Sideways with Paul Giamatti for several days. Not several days. I only watched several hours.
That's a good thought. I like that. That's thematically, that feels really similar.
Exactly. Like an artist on the fringe, trying to crack in, leading a fairly miserable life. But I decided to stick with the New York and the music angle and go with a much lesser seen film called Begin Again with Keira Knightley.
Yeah. I love that movie.
This is, I think, directed by the guy who made Sing Street. And Ruffalo plays a formerly successful record executive. He gets fired. He gets drunk at a bar and hears Keira Knightley performing. And this is one of my favorite things about this movie is this scene, because he hears and visualizes full orchestration and instrumentation to go along with the song, the way a record producer would when they hear a singer, even though she's just singing up there with the guitar and her voice. And after the song ends, you get just her. She cuts all the orchestration out of it. It's just her guitar and her, and you realize that he's just got that ear. And so he decides to pluck her out of obscurity and produce an EP for her. And the conceit is going to be that they record in public spaces in New York City where ambient noise will be part of the track. They record on a rooftop at one point. They record in a park, I think. The music in the film is really enjoyable. The singer from Maroon 5 is in the movie as her ex-boyfriend, who got famous as a singer and then cheated on her. Just a really lovely film that I think has a lot of sweet things to say about music and crafting music and how much of our own lives always seep into that when we do create art. So there you go. That's my super secret double feature. Begin Again.
I like it. Good choice.
I thought it was a little obscure, but if you can seek that out, let me see if it's streaming anywhere. It's worth watching.
It really is. It was one of my favorites that year. It's just a really beautiful movie.
Oh, yeah.
I thought
Adam
Levine, I think, is the Maroon 5 guy's name. I thought he was good. I was like, oh, he can, be in movies, which isn't always the case.
No, he was pretty good. Yeah, it's on Netflix, and it looks like it's on Showtime as well. So there you go. And now, for your homework, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a warning that I expect one or two of you may not watch, and I'll tell you why. It's called The Fallout. It's an HBO, now called Max, original that came out in, I believe, 2021. It was a pandemic movie that completely flew under the radar. Jenna Ortega's in this. She blew up and became a huge star after this movie. The caveats, your trigger warnings. This is about a school shooting. So Jenna Ortega is a student, and she will hear gunshots in an early scene and then run and hide in a bathroom, and there will be more gunshots. So if that is a trigger for you, don't watch this movie. And there is some suicidal conversation here and there. It's heavy, heavy stuff, but I think it's massively important given the world we live in today, at least here in America. So that is your homework if you are able to watch it. And I think it's really special, and I can't wait to dive into it with you guys and Aaron. It's on HBO Max.
The Fallout.
All right. We finally have time for some questions, or we again have time for some questions.
Let's
I can't
do it.
keep track of these shows. All right. Name a film you have fallen asleep watching more than once, even when you were trying to stay awake. It's not good.
I can't remember falling asleep multiple times during a movie. I'm sure it's I'm sure it has happened, but I really racked my brain on this one and couldn't remember one. And it is not common for me. In fact, I never do it. Like, I don't watch stuff as I'm falling asleep. Like, it's just like, that's just not been my practice ever, to like have the TV on while I'm falling asleep or have a podcast in. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people swear it helps them get to sleep, and I totally get that. It's just not ever been my practice. I did, however, recently watch Gene Dealman 23 Quai de Comer 1080 Bruxelles recently.
Okay.
If you don't know about this movie, it recently topped the big Sight and Sound list that comes out every 8 years or 10 years or whatever they release it. Vertigo was at the #1 last time. Citizen Kane before that. Like, it, so this movie ends up at #1 on this list, and I'd never even heard of it before. That may be a flaw in my own movie critic knowledge, whatever the case may be. But it is this movie from the 70s that is literally just watching this woman exist in her life. And I won't necessarily spoil where it goes, but it is 3.5 hours of just watching this woman fold clothing, wash dishes, prepare dinner, those kind of things. And it does eventually kind of have a point of why it's doing that. So I don't want to like knock it, but I will tell you, there's never been a movie where I was more like, I can see myself taking a nap and not missing anything. So I thought I would mention that one. But that's not to say the movie's terrible, because it really does have an interesting thing it's trying to do that I don't want to spoil. But it's weird to me that it jumped to #1 like that.
Say the name of that movie again.
I'm sure I butchered it. But
was it not? I thought it was just a bunch of English words run together really fast.
No, it's French. It's Jean Dealman is the name, and it's JeanneDielman. Then it's 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. So there you go.
You're just showing off.
3.5 hours of watching somebody fold laundry. I'm just saying.
Yeah, don't you think at some point in your life you might want those 3 hours like for another purpose?
There was enough there to talk about that no, I'm glad I watched it. There was a time when I had just gotten married where we didn't have any cable, and I only had like 12 DVDs at the time. This was a little before Blu-ray, I think. So I would put Finding Nemo in every night and sit there on the couch surfing the internet as I got tired, and occasionally would fall asleep and would wake up to the Finding Nemo DVD menu, which humorously has animations and the characters pop in on that one. I remember that one.
To talk to you. I know Aaron loves Finding Nemo, and I think
I do.
it's a perfect movie.
And it was, and the DVD was in all the time when my kids were young, because like they were the perfect. Wasn't that 2004, somewhere around that range?
I think so.
Like, our youngest had just been born, and our oldest was 5 years old. So like that DVD was in all the time between 2004 and 2007.
It's funny. We tried to show it to my brother's kid, and he didn't. He got scared. He didn't want to watch it.
That's a scary opening. It's, you know. It's
Yeah,
fun.
I can't blame him. I can't blame him.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody in the chat? That's me with all Wes Anderson movies. Yeah, I can understand that. Moana, but that's because I was awake for 36 hours and I love that movie. Fantasia. That's a good answer. I did fall asleep watching Nightcrawler, but I was traveling and very drunk. Well, that's understandable. How about another question? I've seen many discussions about misheard song lyrics. What is a line of dialogue from a movie that you originally misheard?
Great question. I had to think about this one for a while. I, for a long time, thought in the repeat in A Whole New World that Jasmine says every moment gets better, because that's what Aladdin says. She actually says every moment red letter, which I find really interesting and different.
What does that mean?
Important. The red letters are important. Like that comes from like the Jesus words in the Bible, right? Like they're in red letter. Isn't that where that comes from? Like a red letter day is an important day. I think that's where that comes from. I could be totally wrong, but anyways, yeah, totally missed that. And recently found out that the line "loco parentis" in Hamilton is not "local apprentice," which I thought it was.
Interesting.
So there you go. It's Latin.
Interesting. How very, very specific of you. I like that answer. I have probably seen Hunt for Red October 30 or 40 times, maybe. And for the longest time, until I was well into my 20s, I misheard a line. And my phone is ringing. This is great radio. Doorbells, telephones. There's a line where Alec Baldwin is saying that Sean Connery's sub-captain is called the Vilnius Schoolmaster. And Vilnius is the name of a city. I think it's Lithuania. I'm not entirely positive, but it's the name of a city that was in the USSR at the time, and that's where he had been born. And so he was the Vilnius Schoolmaster, and he schooled everybody out in the ocean. I always heard that for the first half of my life as villainous, like as though he was, a villainous schoolmaster. And then, I started losing my hearing, and captions came into my life, and a lot of lines I have misheard over the years have been corrected.
Yeah.
I think if you build it, they will come versus if you build it, he will come from Field of Dreams. Interesting. I see people are still answering this fell asleep question. That's all. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll let everybody go to lunch. Rewatching Prisoners is a beautiful movie that, unsurprisingly, is shot amazingly well. What movie that is beautiful to watch but is dark in what movie? That's not good grammar. I should have prepared that before I said it out loud. What is a movie that is beautiful to watch but is dark in theme?
I landed on Midsommar for this, or Midsummer, depending on how you want to say it. An absolute gorgeous movie. The shots in it are spectacular. The landscape is amazing. The colors are very much that midsummer feel. It is beautiful. It is also extremely dark subject matter, as it is a sex death cult, and that is dark subject matter.
You got to join a cult. I mean, a sex death cult seems like a pretty good one to choose.
Say you haven't seen Midsummer without saying you haven't seen Midsummer.
Oh, I've actually seen Midsummer.
Have you? I didn't know you got around to seeing it.
Oh, I saw it a few years back, a couple years back. I was too intrigued by the director and Florence Pugh. And I think you or Chris, somebody gave me some information about what I could look forward to or look away from.
Right.
So I was able to get through it, but I probably won't ever watch it again. I landed on The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Fincher, which I think is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen, even though the color palette is fairly muted. But that is a movie that kind of starts dark and ends darker. And that's the way the story is. The foreign language version is a great film, but there's something about visuals from Fincher that seem to always be beautiful, regardless of the subject matter. So that was my answer. Girl with the dragon tattoo. Well, guys, that's going to do it for today's show. I want to thank the chat, as always, for coming out and giving your input and feedback. And just, being here to support and watch us while we record and broadcast Recotopia episode 74. Your homework for next week is on Max. It's called The Fallout with Jenna Ortega. And it's a heavy, heavy movie. So research your trigger warnings and, don't watch if it's going to upset you. But we'll see you next week. Goodbye. Have a great day. Uh-oh.